My name is Mark May with the McAllen School District. Thank you so much for being here today. A little bit about McTalks. It was inspired by the online video series known as TED Talks, and McTalks features speakers with short, meaningful, and inspiring messages. Both presenters today have a wealth of lifetime experience and lessons learned that they can share with you today, because at one point they were exactly where you were, seated where you were, wondering what they were going to do with the rest of their lives and how they were going to construct that and make that happen, make their dreams come true, and they'll be able to share some of that with you here today. Before we get going deeper into our program, please, out of respect for our presenters, could you please quiet your cell phones and please put them away and focus your attention up on the stage and make sure they are quiet as well. We have our top students from all our McAllen ISD high school campuses here today. And so we're kind of putting a unified front of McAllen ISD here at this presentation. So let me just go through kind of a roll call of the schools that are represented here today. If you hear your school's name called, go ahead and give a big cheer. But if it's not your school, just some polite applause, or please remain quiet until you hear your school called. How about Nicky Rowe High School? Are the Warriors in the house? Great to have you guys here. Mackay Bulldogs, where are you guys? All right, Achieve Jaguars. Great to have y'all here. Lamar Academy, the Phoenix. Good. And I think one more. Memorial, is Memorial here? Okay, good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have some special guests here I'd like to introduce before we get started. First of all, representing our school board of trustees, our president of the board, Mr. Sam Salivar Jr. is here. Thank you, sir. Also from the Board of Trustees, Mr. Marco Suarez. Brought his own fan club. Good. And our Superintendent of Schools, the 2020 Texas Superintendent of the Year, Dr. Jay Gonzales. And then some names you may not hear very often, but they are kind of behind the scenes and help make everything happen across this wide district with 20,000 students and over 3,000 employees. We have our executive leadership team here. And let me just run through the names first before we applaud. We have Ms. V, Dr. De Hoyos, Mr. Miller, Ms. Richards, Ms. Loya, Ms. Felix, and Mr. Berry. Could we give them a round of applause, please? And then we also want to thank our principal for allowing us to use these facilities today, the Memorial High principal, Mr. Alvarez. All right, our speakers are going to spend a few minutes to share their life's journey, highs and lows, inspirations that kept them going, the type of work they're doing now, and how living and learning here in this area has helped them become who they are today. We're going to be here from later, we're going to hear from Mr. Jay Gonzales, local attorney. Thank you for being here, sir. And also the president of South Texas College, Dr. Ricardo Solis, is here. And now to get us started, please welcome our superintendent of schools, Dr. Jay Gonzales.
Good morning, everyone. What a beautiful day it is in McAllen, Texas, and what a wonderful day it is for McAllen ISD as we celebrate McTalks. And I want to let you know that today is about you all, students. We want to make sure that we put all of you on a path of success. And I know you've been working very hard. For the last 2 years, we've asked you to do more than we've asked any other student body to do. And you've handled it with resiliency and with grit and with a positive attitude. And for that, I say thank you. As I look across the audience, I see representation from different parts of the community, but I see our future doctors and lawyers and engineers and teachers and businessmen and women, servicemen and women. Just the universe of all possibilities is in this room. So McTalks is about inspiring you. And I hope that you find a nugget of truth. I hope that you find a portion of a story that you can connect to your story, so that as you move on to the next chapter of your life, chasing whatever that dream is, that you're able to leverage that. Because at the end of the day, we get strength from one another. And as I close, I can't help but think of one of my favorite books, The Jungle Book, written in 1894 by Kipling. He talks about the law of the jungle. And I'll share that with you now because it makes complete sense and it aligns with today's McTalks. And it goes like this. For this is the law of the jungle, as pure and as true as the sky. And the wolf that follows it shall prosper, but the wolf that doesn't must die. That's metaphorically speaking. And this law runs forward and backward. For the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. Today is about getting strength from one another through stories. So please stay engaged. We have two wonderful presenters that are at the top of their game in their field. We're blessed to have them with us today. So thank you all very much for your attention, and enjoy McTalks.
Mr. Jay Gonzales was born in McAllen. He grew up in Minnesota. He spent many years as a migrant worker helping his family make ends meet. And growing up, he became aware of injustices and hardships, and he never forgot them. After completing high school, he enrolled in the University of Texas Pan American, graduated in 1992 with a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies. He spent the next 5 years teaching in the public school system. During that time, he earned a master's degree from what was then UT Pan American. He later decided to pursue a degree as a doctor of jurisprudence. His studies took him across the Atlantic Ocean, where he studied at Oxford University in England. He earned his law degree at St. Mary's School of Law in San Antonio in the year 2000 and became a member of the State Bar of Texas in 2001. He now practices law in the Rio Grande Valley. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Jay Gonzales.
All right. Test 1, 2, 3. All right. Nice room here, filled with amazing students, talented students. I hear you're the best of the best. I can relate to that a little bit. Listen, honestly, I'm not here to motivate any of you because clearly you are motivated enough to have excelled as much as you have. That's why you're in this room. So it's really, for me, not about inspiring or motivating you. It's about talking to you about things that can shape your life, can be critical in determining your future, right? And in talking to you about that, I want to just share my past with you, but I'm going to share my past with you because I think it's important that you know that just because you are where you are right now, whatever it is that you're doing, geographically, biographically, whatever, don't let your past determine your future. Don't let your past determine your destiny. And, you know, when I talk about my past, I do it to let you all know that that's where I come from, but that's not where I ended up. So remember that. As I mentioned earlier today, I was a migrant farm worker. I did that for roughly 17 years. We went to Minnesota. We hoed sugar beets. And that's what we did from, early in the morning to late in the afternoon. We did that for 3-4 months every summer. And every summer when I did that, I couldn't understand why my life was so difficult, why it was so hard. Why were my friends going to pool parties? Why were they going to the beach? Why were they enjoying their summers? I was working in the fields, in the sun, the rain, the mud, the thousands of mosquitoes, which incidentally is the state bird of Minnesota, because there's so many of them. And so at the time, I didn't understand it. I hated it. I was very resentful of that. And I blamed my parents. Why are you giving me such a hard life? But what I did not understand was that they were planting the seeds very early on to where I was going to end up. Because a lot of what I've done in my life began in those fields. It taught me to have a strong work ethic. It taught me to basically wake up, go to work, and do the kind of things that I needed to do my job. But what is important about that is that I made a decision every single time that I went up there that I did not want that to be my future. And that's the most important thing today here that I want to tell you, that power lies in your decision making. That is the most powerful thing that you can do. Whatever it is that you decide, keep your word to that decision and make that happen for you. Because if I had chosen the easy path, believe it or not, for me was to continue being a migrant farm worker. That would have been the easiest thing to do. I was very good at it. But I chose a different path. I said, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to become a teacher. I'm going to get a master's. I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to open up my own law firm. And it was never easy. It was always tough because I never had the resources. And that's critical. I never had the resources. What does that mean? If you stop and think about it, the vast majority of people that you come across will complain and talk about how they couldn't do this or they couldn't do that because they didn't have the resources, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the parents that gave them this or gave them that. And they will make excuses for failing, for not achieving their dreams. So in life, it's not about the resources, it's about being resourceful. It's about resourcefulness. And as I look across this room right here, right now, the future that you build for yourself, your destiny, it's not going to be determined by your past, by the lack of resources. It's going to be determined by you making a decision to be something better than who you are today, and then being resourceful, and in being resourceful, taking massive action. What do I mean by that? You can't just sleepwalk through that decision making. You got to take massive action to make it something that is going to be impactful. For you as students, the best example that I can give you, you can study 1 or 2 hours a day. When I was in law school, I knew that in order for me to be successful and be the best, it wasn't enough to study 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a day. I'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and my goal was to study no less than 9 hours a day. Sometimes I put in 14 hours a day, sometimes 16 hours a day, because I was committed to do the very best that I could. And you make those sacrifices. Remember, you make that decision, then you make that sacrifice, and then you stick with it, right? So that allowed me, obviously, to graduate, to pass the bar exam. And then when I opened my practice, it's the same thing. You work 24 hours a day many times. You don't even eat. When you're that committed, you don't get hungry. And you are so enthusiastic and passionate about what you do that you let that drive you. So for me, in terms of what I'm talking about, being resourceful, being committed, making those decisions, those are things that will lay the foundation. Because when you fall on hard times, those are the things that are going to sustain you. For me, COVID-19, as we all know, hit my business very hard. I'm a personal injury lawyer. And when you shut down schools, when you shut down restaurants, bars, when you tell people to stay home, there isn't going to be a lot of accidents out there. So what did I do? I turned inward and I said, how can I flip this around and make this something good? I had to be resourceful. The clients weren't there. And what did that turn into? A new office in Weslaco, a new office pretty soon here in Harlingen, building a new headquarters in Edinburgh. I turned something bad into something good. And again, being committed to that cause. Now, the thing that I wanted to share with you also is that here in the last 6 years, I've had 2 brushes with death. First, a brain hemorrhage, where I was given 24 hours to live, and obviously the doctor was wrong. And when they operated me in Houston, my surgeon said, we can't explain it, but your brain healed itself. It shut off that blood vessel that was bleeding, and there's no medical explanation for it. Just know that the bleeding has stopped. The second time that I had a close brush with death was COVID. I had double pneumonia. I wasn't responding to the medication. And the doctors basically looked at my x-rays and said, if you don't get better by tomorrow, we're going to have to intubate you. Miraculously, the next day, I got better. They had no explanation for it. Some people respond to the medication. Some people don't. I was one of those fortunate ones that did. But when you have close brushes with death, you feel your mortality. You know you're not going to be here forever. And that gives you a sense of urgency. Basically, wanting to live every day like it's your last. And the trick for all of you here is don't wait. Don't wait for that close call, for that brush with death. Find that sense of urgency. And you usually will find it in whatever it is that you're passionate about. And then pursue that with everything you've got. Because your past, as I said before, does not determine your future. Where you're from, where you've been, does not determine your future. The decisions that you make is what will shape that. And the most important thing about making those decisions is make sure that when you choose a profession or a career, do it in the service of others. Help your fellow man. And the key to doing that is be unique in the way that you do that. Stand out. Be different. Be true to yourself. This world is filled with imitators, copycats. I even have a commercial making fun of people that are imitators and copycats. Why? Because you will get way more satisfaction out of being an original than trying to be like somebody else. And that tends to happen a lot at the high school level. But it doesn't stop when you pursue a career. So find that uniqueness. What makes you you? And exploit that in the service of others. And I promise you, if you do that, you're going to have a lot of success. And the beautiful thing about that is that when you are you and you exploit that uniqueness, it's very, very difficult, nearly impossible. In fact, it's impossible for people to copy you because they'll never be you. And if I can share one of my secrets to success, it's been that I haven't looked at my competitors and said, what are they doing so that I can do that? What I do is driven by what I want to do, who I want to be, and I'm not looking at other people to determine that. So you need to pursue that. I'll leave you with this. And I talked to Dr. Gonzalez last night about this, and he shared this with me. And it was something that I thought was pretty profound, even though you would think, well, that kind of makes sense. In life, they always say it's not about the destination, it's about the journey, right? And enjoy the journey. Enjoy the process. But the most important thing about that process is who are you with? Who are you enjoying that process with? And we've heard, tell me who you hang out with, and I'll tell you who you are, right? We've also heard keep good company, because people that you're with sometimes can keep you from your dreams. So that journey can determine your success depending on who you decide to hang out with. And everybody in here, all of you students, you're young. And your future can be shaped by those that you decide to hang out with. So choose your friends carefully, because a lot of your dreams may not come to pass if you choose to spend time with those that don't support those dreams or with those that may get in the way of those dreams. And some of the best decisions I've made, and I talked about decision making, is to cut certain people out of my life so that I could pursue my dreams and fulfill my destiny. So just remember that. And with that, I would leave you. I wish you all the success in the world. And I know that every single one of you in here has what it takes to be successful. I'm looking at every single person here right now, and all of you have that look, the look that tells me that you want to succeed, that you want to be successful. But remember this, it's not about your desire to want to succeed, it's your willingness to prepare. You've got to put in the time, you've got to put in the effort, you've got to put in the sacrifice. That's what will make the difference between you achieving your dreams and your destiny. Good luck to all of you.
How about one more time for Mr. Jay Gonzales? Dr. Ricardo Solis was named president of South Texas College in July of last year after a nationwide search. He is only the second person to lead the institution in its 28-year history. And Dr. Solis previously served as president of Laredo College in Laredo and has held different administrative positions at other institutions, including Texas State Technical College, Houston Community College, Gateway Community College, and Maricopa Community Colleges in Phoenix, Arizona. Dr. Solis earned a Doctor of Philosophy in Higher Education Administration and Community College Leadership from the University of Texas at Austin, a Master of Business Administration in International Management from Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, California, and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and Economics from Trinity University in San Antonio. Dr. Solis will be celebrating his one-year anniversary this summer, but in the short time he has been at STC, he has brought renewed energy, excitement, and purpose to the college and to our community. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Ricardo Solis.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. It is great to be here. This morning, I'm going to provide you some different type of perspectives and advice, but more importantly, it's going to be tangible. And I'm so glad that Mr. Gonzalez provided you some insights about being motivated and how relying on yourself, but most importantly, that last point, which I also happen to have on my today's presentation, is the willingness. That's going to be the key, your willingness to succeed. Because nobody's going to give it to you. You have to make it happen. Now, this morning, I'm going to talk to you about leadership and how I was able to attain the tenets, the most important tenets of leadership, and how to succeed in any organization at any level. And it took me many years to compile my 5 tenets of leadership. And I'm going to make sure that you understand these 5 tenets of leadership, because I know the superintendents are going to quiz you on these 5 tenets sometime later this week, and I hope he does, because these are one that I compiled throughout many years after working not only in the public sector, but most importantly in the private sector, which many of you are probably going to be, that's where you're going to be starting in the private sector, with industry. I worked many years in that sector, working with industry, with corporations, not only along the border in Mexico, but it was in South America and in China. It wasn't until later that I decided to change careers and go into higher education. So my point, of course, of my talk today is that it is never too late to change careers. And that is really the point that I want you to take with you. Because I know right now, as Mr. Gonzalez mentioned, you are winners. You're definitely the top. But most importantly, I know that you're also right now undecided of what to do with your career, where to go. And that's normal. That's okay. We don't expect you. And we don't want you to be determined yet what to do. This is going to be the final point that I wanted to touch upon today, is that it's okay to change careers several times, because at the average change right now by any person in their careers is 8 times. People change careers, change jobs 8 times on average a year, in a lifetime. And so I remember being in your place at your age, and I had no idea what else I was going to do, other than clearly continue my education. That's the critical path to continue. Now let's go to the 5 tenets of leadership that I want you to understand, and that's for a lifetime. And it begins, especially with any organization where you're at high school or in college, or when you work part-time. Number one most important tenet is going to be inclusivity. You have to be inclusive. Just like many of you are in different clubs and organizations. Some of you are playing sports. Some of you are in the debate team. Many committees that I know that you participate in. You have to be inclusive. You have to include everybody. You cannot do anything on your own. Okay, number one. Number two, you have to be visionary. In other words, I know that's hard at your stage to be visionary, meaning you have to have the ability to predict, to know what's going to happen. And what do you do by doing that? You have to constantly keep updated, read, but most importantly, you need to rely on others to find out what's going on in any event, any organization, any company, any trend, or in the economy. Number three, you have to have the ability to influence others. You know what that means? Having the ability to influence others, that's a true leadership trait. And how do you do that? Well, you have to connect with people. You have to talk with everyone. You have to be able to make that friendship, make that point of connection. That's how you influence. That's how true leaders are able to use the power of influencing others. And of course, fourth one is you have to have credibility. You have to be real. Because anybody in any organization, they will size you up when they meet you, just like you do on the social level. Is this person for real? So you have to be informed. You have to be educated. You have to be well-read. You have to know about that subject. Because I think we all know when you know somebody comes up to you and pretends to know something they don't know anything, that's when they lose credibility. And that's part of life. Very, very important. And finally, you have to have a passion for what you do, where you want to go. And this is the point I want to make, just like it was said earlier. Having a passion of what you do is critical. And I know at this stage, again, you're not really sure what you want to do, but you have an idea, be it computers, be it health, technology, manufacturing, legal. So we have many different areas you can go into. But we realize this is, again, at this point, follow your path, and then you will be able to matriculate into a program. But most importantly, do what your heart takes you to right now. And then finally, actually, I have a sixth one, but this is more for leaders. This is one that I've learned throughout the years. The most difficult leadership trait is to execute. But that also applies to you. Execute means getting things done, completing your task, knowing how to be resourceful. And you let others, that's part of the whole, see how they all fall together, as I mentioned? All of those traits fall together in being able to get things done. By having all of those, you'll be able to execute and complete your task, complete what your dreams are. Very important. And of course, that comes down to another area that I want to very briefly touch upon. I just gave you right now about 40 years a business background, and working with industry. But how those 6 tenets really apply in being successful in any setting. But now, most importantly, it's critical that you understand that today's day, as you know, we just finished the pandemic. We're still going, we're at the final stages. The big part, the worst part is over. But we learned 2 things. Most importantly, we learned that we have to be flexible because we have to adapt. Because under these extraordinary times, what we learned, you remember 2 years ago, all of a sudden your life was radically changed. Well, that's part of life. We're going to see that's one thing we learned that we were not used to. We have not had a radical change like that in many years, in over 60 years, since probably back in World War II or World War I. Those were the days that, well, I was not there yet at that time, but that we saw those big changes in life change. And those happen, and they're going to happen a lot quicker now. Not necessarily a viral or health, but it's going to be technological changes, or it's going to be changes in the economy that's going to radically change our life. So we need you just to get over it, get used to it, and learn to adapt immediately. That is very important. If you accept that, you'll be able to succeed to anything. And number 2, most importantly, is that we are not here alone. In this world, we need to depend on each other. You need to depend on your family, and most importantly, I know that some don't have family, but you have your friends, you have each other. Don't forget that, because that's how you are able to rely on each other and succeed. Because let me tell you a secret, and how you can rely on others. This is what my father taught me. He was a big, successful businessman in Mexico. He said, always don't be afraid to ask others to help you. And this same thing goes for you. You have here the great administrators. You have other people you'll be meeting. Go up to them and ask them for advice, for help. Because my father told me, believe me, people love to be asked and said, Mr. Superintendent, I need your advice. They love to be asked that. Is that correct? That's a normal reaction. People love to be asked. They look up to you and say, can I have your advice? I need help in how to attain this, or how to learn about that, or how to get this job, how to pursue this career. They love to do that. They love to be asked. So that, for me, was the most valuable advice. But my father told me, because I was just out of graduate school, out of California, and I was 25 years old, and I thought I knew everything in international trade, and I sure did not. But I remember that advice. What did I do? I immediately went asking everybody, not to the top, but in the middle and to the lowest people, to the clerks, the people in the receiving, the shipping, and so on. They had all, and they were not used to people going up to them and being asked for their advice. So use that. It's a critical tool. It's really easy to do. So that is one of my most valuable advice I would ask you to consider, is relying on others, and don't hold back. Ask people for advice, because they love to give advice, in a good way, of course. So with that closing, I have a little, actually, I always use this, and it happens even to fall exactly to what Mr. Gonzalez was saying, because I compiled three different topics into one of advice, very general, but very, very appropriate to today. It goes like this. The capacity to learn is a gift. All of you have that capacity. In other words, you're healthy, you can hear, you can see, you can speak. Many of you are bilingual, and you're here, of course. That is the capacity. You have that, God's gift. So embrace that, appreciate that. Number 2, the ability to learn is a skill. You have that ability. That skill is being provided to you clearly by the administrators, by MAC High, by the superintendents. the McAllen Independent School District. They're providing you that skill. You are learning, you're taking advantage of that skill. So do that. Make sure you understand that. But the most important, you heard this earlier, the willingness to learn is the choice. That is the one that I said in previous speaker said, the willingness to learn. You have to be willing to learn. That is your choice. No one else. That's a very profound, so meaning that at the end it's up to you to make things happen. But you have everything already right there. You have the ability, you have the capacity, so now you just have to have the willingness. So with that said, I wanted just to close now, of course, as the president of the largest community college in South Texas. One thing we're doing is adapting to the changes, these immediate changes that I mentioned. And this is one that is going to impact your life, and that is your willingness to change and adapt. At the college, we are constantly changing and upgrading our programs, and the key is going to be now, and that is coming from industry. We are constantly talking to industry, from Apple to Microsoft to the manufacturers to the automotive people, and of course to the hospitals. We talk to everybody. And clearly, the trend is that you do not want to get into a final and permanent degree. You need to just get the fundamentals, learn in any area, be it art, be it science, doesn't matter. And you're learning from that. And you get into an industry, you get to work, but always, always keep your options open, which is what we are doing at college, at South Texas College. We are providing now very unique short-term diplomas, short-term certificates. So you don't have to be bogged down and want to get a degree and it takes you 5, 6 years, and then you realize it's not what you wanted or you didn't like that field. So now, fortunately, we have this capacity to be able to allow you to have several degrees, short-term degrees. And you can go from art, manufacturing, to welding, to health, to criminology, on and on. You know, we have over 100 programs. But now you are very fortunate that you have what we did not have when I was in college. We have so many multi-units of programs available for you to go in, get an associate degree, and then get a certificate. And of course, it would never hurt no matter what you obtain, and continue. Get to work, but most importantly, you have the ability to come back. And that, another secret, is what industry, what employers want to hear. Remember, I work with industry. Half of my career was working with companies, not necessarily in higher education. Industry wants to know, wants to see what you're willing to do. And when they're going to be interviewing you, they're not going to ask you, what degree do you have? They want to know, what have you learned to do with those certificates, with those diplomas, with this associate degree, or your degree? What can you do with that? What can you do for me? That is what they're going to ask you. And most importantly, what they want to know is that you have the ability and the capacity, and most importantly, they want to know if you have the willingness to learn and relearn again. Just like Toyota, Google, Apple, they don't expect you to have a degree in those fields. They expect you to have the basics, but most importantly, that you're willing to put in the time to upskill and to relearn what they provide. That is what they want to see. So remember that. They want you to know that they want to learn that you're willing to take the time to relearn again something else in a different field. So it all fits in perfectly, knowing that industry wants this. They want to know that you have that mobility, but most importantly, that you have the willingness to relearn, to go back to college, not necessarily learning under them, but you can take the time and relearn again, get another certificate. that is going to be the key. You're going to see that more and more now than ever. So with that said, I think I give you a lot of information, so I don't want to give you too much overload of information. But this is some great wisdom. Most importantly, is some business information that would help you professionally and personally. So again, thank you very much for having me here. And I look forward to continuing coming back here. And again, don't forget what I said, most importantly, don't shy for asking them for advice, just like with me as well. Because adults and professionals, that's what we're here for. We love to be asked for our advice and how to help you succeed in life. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Thank you.